Where did you steal that coat? That name, my name is stitched inside it. The little girl looked up at him, startled but not afraid. Her brows pulled together in confusion. I didn't steal it, she said quickly, holding the coat closer around herself. My mom gave it to me. I don't steal things. Daniel's expression softened immediately. Hey, all right, he said, lowering his voice. I believe you. I'm sorry. That came out wrong. The hum of the gas station continued around them, the soft beep of the register, wind brushing against the glass doors. Daniel nodded toward the coat. It just surprised me, he said, because I'm almost certain that coat used to be mine. The girl blinked. She looked down at the coat, then back at him, clearly unsure. No, she said, shaking her head. It's my mom's. Daniel gave a small, patient nod. I understand why you'd say that, he replied. But I had this exact coat made years ago. Custom. Limited edition. Not something you can just find anywhere. Before the girl could respond, a voice came from behind the counter. All right, what's going on here? Frank had stepped out again, this time more direct, his tone firmer. He looked from Daniel to the girl, then back again. Sir, he said, you got your change. So why are you still here talking to a kid and now claiming her coat belongs to you? Daniel turned calmly. I'm not causing trouble, he said. Frank crossed his arms. Then what are you doing? Because from where I'm standing, it sounds like you're trying to tell her something she clearly doesn't believe. Daniel didn't react to the tension. He simply gestured toward the coat. That jacket is a custom piece I owned, he said. I gave it away years ago to someone who helped me. I never saw it again until now. Frank narrowed his eyes. And you expect us to just take your word for it? Daniel paused. That's fair, he said. Behind him, the girl spoke again, her tone thoughtful but firm. If it's really yours, she said, then prove it. Daniel looked at her. He nodded once. All right, he said quietly. Without another word, he turned and walked out of the store. Frank frowned immediately. Now what's he doing? He muttered, stepping closer to the glass. The girl watched too, curious. Outside, the wind had picked up. Daniel crossed the lot with steady steps, heading toward his Range Rover. He opened the trunk, reached inside, and pulled something out long, dark, folded carefully. Then he closed the trunk and walked back toward the entrance. Inside, the door swung open with a soft chime. Daniel stepped in, holding the coat in both hands. He walked straight back to where the girl stood, then carefully unfolded it. For a moment, no one spoke, because what he held was the same coat, same color, same cut, same weight of fabric. Frank stepped closer without realizing it. Wait, he said under his breath. Daniel turned the coat slightly and opened the inside lining. D. Carter. The same stitching, the same placement, the same unmistakable detail. He didn't say anything at first. He just let them look. The girl's eyes moved from the coat in his hands to the one she was wearing, then back again. They're the same, she whispered. Daniel nodded gently. I had two made, he said. One for myself, one as a backup. Same tailor, same design, same stitching. Frank let out a slow breath. He muttered. Daniel looked back at the girl, his voice calm, careful not to overwhelm her. I'm not here to take anything from you, he said. That coat, it was given as a gift. And if your mom has had it all these years, then it belongs with her. The girl held on to the front of her coat again, but this time not defensively, just thoughtfully. My mom said someone kind gave it to her, she said. Daniel's expression softened. I remember that night, he replied quietly. It was cold. My car broke down, and she stayed to help me when she didn't have to. He paused. She was the kind one, not me. The girl looked at him differently now, not with suspicion, with curiosity. She works here, she said again, pointing toward the back hallway. Daniel followed her gesture, then looked back at her. Is she almost done? Soon. Daniel folded his coat back over his arm. Behind him, Frank shook his head slightly. Well, he said, I guess you weren't making it up. Daniel gave a faint smile. I don't make claims like that lightly. Frank studied him a moment longer, then nodded. All right. Just keep things respectful. I will. Daniel stepped aside and moved toward the waiting area, sitting down a short distance away. The girl glanced at him. You're waiting? Yes. You don't have to. I know. Outside, the wind pressed harder against the glass. Inside, something had shifted. Daniel didn't realize how still he had become until the sound of a door creaking open pulled him back. It came from the narrow hallway behind the counter. A shift change. Footsteps followed slow, measured, the kind that carried the weight of a long day. Frank glanced up briefly, then nodded toward the back. "Hey, Monica, you're good to clock out." Daniel's attention sharpened instantly. Monica. The name settled somewhere deep, though he didn't yet know why. A woman stepped into view. She wore a faded work shirt with the station's logo stitched over the chest, sleeves rolled just above her wrists. There were faint smudges of grease along the fabric, and a tiredness in her posture that spoke of hours spent on her feet. But there was something else too, something steady, composed, quietly resilient. She reached up, pulling her hair back into place as she stepped forward, and then she saw him. Her eyes locked onto his. Daniel felt it instantly, not recognition in the loud, dramatic sense, but something quieter, something deeper, the kind that takes a second longer to reach the surface, because it's been buried. Annie turned in her seat. "Mom," she said, brightening. "You're done?" Monica didn't answer right away. Her gaze hadn't left Daniel. Then, slowly, she stepped forward. "Annie," she said, her voice calm but careful. "Come here a second." The girl slid off her chair and walked over, still glancing between them. Daniel stood. "You're still in Chicago," he said quietly. Monica let out a small breath, almost like a short laugh but without humor. "So are you," she replied. Her voice hadn't changed. That was the first thing he noticed. Frank looked between them, surprised. "You two know each other?" he asked. Monica didn't answer him. Her eyes dropped briefly to the coat Annie was wearing, then to the one Daniel held. She looked back up at Daniel. "You kept the other one," she said. Daniel nodded once. "I wasn't sure I should," he admitted, "but I couldn't throw it away." Monica's gaze softened just slightly. Annie looked up at her mother. "Mom, he said he gave you this coat," she said. "A long time ago, when it was cold." Monica placed a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Yes," she said quietly. "He did." Frank blinked. "Well, I'll be," he muttered under his breath. Silence settled for a moment, not awkward, but full. Daniel broke it carefully. "I tried to find you," he said. Monica shook her head. Not dismissive, just certain. "I didn't leave anything to be found," she replied. Daniel accepted it. "I figured that out," he said. Annie looked between them again, curiosity growing. "You helped him?" she asked her mother. Monica nodded. "He needed help," she said simply. Daniel let out a quiet breath. "I needed more than I realized," he added. Monica didn't respond to that. Instead, she glanced at Annie. "Did you finish your homework?" she asked gently. "Almost." "Good." The small exchange grounded the moment, pulling it back into something familiar, something real. Daniel watched them, mother and child, and felt something shift again inside him. "You've taken care of it," he said, nodding toward the coat. Monica glanced at the stitching along the sleeve. "It was too good to waste," she replied. "And winters don't get easier around here." Daniel gave a faint, understanding smile. "No, they don't." There was another pause. Daniel cleared his throat slightly. "I don't want to make this uncomfortable," he said. "I just didn't expect to see that coat again. Or you." Monica studied him for a second. Then she nodded. "I didn't expect it either." Annie tugged lightly at her mother's hand. "Mom, he waited for you," she said. Monica looked at Daniel again. "You did?" Daniel didn't hesitate. "Yes." "Why?" He considered the question. "Because there were many answers, but only one that mattered. Because some things shouldn't be left unfinished," he said. Monica held his gaze. For a moment, something unspoken passed between them, something shaped by years, distance, and a night neither of them had forgotten. If this moment touched your heart, take a second to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me where you are watching from, because your story matters too. And if you believe in second chances and unfinished stories finding their way back, don't forget to subscribe for more. Frank cleared his throat awkwardly behind the counter. "Well," he said, "I guess that settles the mystery of the coat." No one responded. Daniel shifted slightly, adjusting his grip on the coat he had brought in. "I was on my way somewhere," he said. "But that can wait." Monica raised an eyebrow slightly. "Must not have been that important." Daniel allowed himself a small smile. "It wasn't." Annie looked up at both of them again, then spoke with simple certainty. We could get something to eat, she said. Monica glanced down at her. That's not something we just... It's all right, Daniel said gently, not interrupting, just offering. Monica looked at him. There was hesitation there. Daniel didn't push. Just lunch, he said. Nothing complicated. Monica considered it. Then she looked at Annie, who was watching her with quiet hope. Finally, she exhaled. All right, she said. Lunch. Annie smiled. Daniel nodded once. All right. And as the three of them stood there, preparing to step out of the small gas station and into something neither of them had planned, the rain had already begun by the time they stepped outside. Not heavy, just a steady drizzle that softened the edges of everything. The pavement darkened, reflecting the dim glow of the gas station lights, and the wind carried that quiet, familiar chill that settled deep into the bones if you stood still too long. Daniel moved ahead slightly, opening the passenger door of his Range Rover. Go ahead, he said, stepping back to give them space. Monica hesitated. It wasn't about the car. It was about everything that came with it. She had spent years learning how to move through life without depending on moments like this, without expecting doors to open, without assuming kindness came without a cost. Annie, however, stepped forward without overthinking it. She paused just long enough to look at her mother. It's raining, she said simply. Monica exhaled quietly. All right, she said. They got in. Daniel closed the door gently and walked around to the driver's side. For a brief moment, he stood there, rain tapping lightly against his coat, his hand resting on the handle. Then he got in. The inside of the car was warm, insulated from the outside world. Soft leather, subtle lighting. The faint scent of cedar and something clean, understated. Annie sat quietly, looking around not with wide-eyed amazement, but with a quiet awareness. She noticed things. The stitching on the seats, the way the dashboard lights shifted as the engine started, the small details. Daniel noticed that about her. She pays attention, he said, glancing briefly at Monica. Monica followed his gaze. She always has, she replied. Daniel nodded. I can tell. He pulled the car out slowly, the wipers moving in a steady rhythm. Do you have a place in mind? He asked. Monica shook her head. Somewhere simple, she said. Nothing fancy. Daniel gave a faint smile. I know a place. They drove in quiet for a few minutes. Not uncomfortable, just unhurried. Rain streaked across the windows, blurring the city lights into soft lines of gold and red. The kind of evening that made people go home early, sit down with warm food, and let the world slow for a while. Daniel kept his eyes on the road, but his thoughts were elsewhere. You've been working there long? He asked after a moment. Almost 5 years, Monica said. He glanced at her briefly. 5? She nodded. Steady work matters more than perfect work. There was no complaint in her voice, just truth. Daniel understood that. I should have looked harder, he said quietly. Monica didn't respond immediately. You looked, she said after a moment. That's more than most people would have done. That doesn't mean it was enough. No, she agreed. It doesn't. The honesty between them didn't cut. It settled. Annie leaned slightly forward from the back seat. Were you really stuck on the road? She asked. Daniel smiled faintly. I was. What happened? My car broke down, phone died, and I didn't know how to fix either problem. Annie considered that. And my mom helped you? She did. Monica looked out the window, her reflection faint in the glass. You looked like someone who wasn't used to needing help, she said. Daniel let out a quiet breath. I wasn't. And now? He thought about it, then answered simply, I'm learning. The car slowed as they turned onto a quieter street. A small diner came into view, nothing flashy. Just a warm glow through wide windows, a neon sign humming softly above the door. Daniel parked. This all right? He asked. Monica nodded. This is good. They stepped out into the light rain and moved quickly inside. The bell above the door chimed. Warmth greeted them instantly. The smell of grilled food, coffee, and something sweet baking in the back wrapped around the room like a familiar memory. A few customers sat in booths, talking quietly. A waitress behind the counter looked up and smiled. Sit wherever you like, she said. Daniel gestured toward a booth near the window. They slid in Annie by the glass, Monica across from Daniel. Menus were handed out. Annie looked at hers carefully. Daniel noticed. Take your time, he said. She nodded. Monica glanced up at him. You don't do this often, do you? she asked. Do what? Sit somewhere like this. Daniel looked around. He smiled slightly. Not as often as I should. The waitress returned. What can I get you folks? Coffee, Daniel said. Same, Monica added. Annie looked up. Hot chocolate, please. The waitress smiled, coming right up. As she walked away, silence settled again, but this time it felt different. Warmer, grounded. Daniel rested his hands lightly on the table. I meant what I said earlier, he began. About that night. Monica met his Gaze. I know. I didn't forget. I didn't expect you to. He nodded. I just didn't expect this. Monica followed his glance toward Annie. Life doesn't usually give notice, she said. No, he agreed. It doesn't. Annie looked between them, then down at her menu again. After a moment, she spoke softly. You kept your coat, she said. Daniel smiled faintly. I did. Why? He thought about it. Because it mattered. Because she mattered. Because something about that night had stayed with him longer than anything else in that season of his life. But he didn't say all that. Instead, he answered simply, because it reminded me of someone who did the right thing when she didn't have to. Annie nodded, satisfied with that. Monica looked at him, really looked this time. Not at the man he had become, but at the man she had met years ago. There were differences. Of course there were. But some things hadn't changed. The way he spoke when he meant something. The way he paused before answering. The way he didn't rush moments that mattered. The waitress returned with their drinks. Steam rose from the coffee. The hot chocolate was topped with a small swirl of whipped cream. Annie smiled slightly at that. Outside, the rain continued. Inside, time slowed. And for the first time since stepping into that gas station, this didn't feel like coincidence anymore. It felt like something being given a second chance. Not forced, not rushed, just allowed. And as Daniel sat there, across from the woman he had once lost to the quiet corners of the city, and beside the child who carried a piece of that past into the present, he understood something clearly. Some stories don't end. They wait. For the moment someone is willing to continue them. The diner had a rhythm of its own. Plates clinked softly. Coffee refilled without being asked. Conversations stayed low. Respectful, like people understood that some places were meant for quiet, not noise. The kind of place older folks returned to out of habit, not trend. The kind of place where no one rushed you out the door. Daniel sat back slightly after taking a sip of his coffee, letting the warmth settle in. Across from him, Monica wrapped her hands loosely around her cup, not drinking yet, just holding it, like she needed the heat more than the taste. Annie stirred her hot chocolate slowly, watching the swirl of cream disappear into the dark. For a moment, none of them spoke, but it wasn't empty. It was full in a different way, like a pause before something important found the right words. Daniel broke the silence gently. You stayed in the same area all these years? Monica nodded once. Didn't have much reason to leave, she said. Work was steady. School was close. Her eyes shifted briefly toward Annie. That matters more than anything. Daniel followed her gaze. Yeah, he said quietly. It does. He leaned forward slightly, resting his forearms on the table. I meant what I said earlier, he added, about not wanting to make things uncomfortable. Monica gave a small, almost knowing look. You already did, she said. There was no bite in it, just honesty. Daniel accepted it with a faint smile. Fair enough. She studied him for a moment. You're not used to being out of place, are you? She asked. Daniel considered the question. No, he said, but I think I needed to be. Monica nodded slowly. That's usually when people learn something. Annie looked up. Like what? She asked. Monica glanced at her. That not everything is about what you want, she said. Sometimes it's about what you're willing to understand. Annie thought about that, then nodded as if filing it away. Daniel watched the exchange, something quiet settling deeper inside him. You've done well, he said to Monica. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she picked up her cup, took a small sip, then set it back down. We managed, she said. That's more than most people can say. Monica looked at him again. Managing and living aren't the same thing, she replied. Daniel didn't argue, because he knew she was right. The waitress returned with their food, simple plates, warm and filling. A burger and fries for Annie, a sandwich for Monica, steak and eggs for Daniel. Nothing complicated, just real food. Anything else you need? The waitress asked. We're good, thank you, Daniel said. As she walked away, Annie picked up a fry, then paused. "Do you always eat like this?" she asked Daniel. He smiled slightly. "No," he admitted. "What do you usually eat?" "Whatever someone puts in front of me during meetings." Annie frowned. "That doesn't sound fun." "It isn't." Monica almost smiled at that. They ate for a while, the conversation easing into something more natural. Not forced. Not careful. Just present. After a few minutes, Daniel set his fork down. "There's something I need to ask," he said. Monica didn't look up immediately. "Go ahead." Daniel hesitated not because he didn't know what to say, but because he understood the weight behind it. "That night," he began, "after everything, you didn't leave anything. No name, no number." Monica wiped her hands with a napkin. "I didn't think it was necessary. It was to me." She met his eyes. "It wasn't to me," she said. There was no anger in it, just a boundary that had been set long ago. Daniel nodded slowly. "I get that now," he said. Monica studied him carefully. "Do you?" she asked. He didn't rush his answer. "No," he said honestly, "but I'm trying to." That seemed to matter more than anything else he could have said. Annie looked between them again. "You wanted to find her?" she asked Daniel. "Yes." "Why?" Daniel leaned back slightly. "Because she stayed. Because she didn't treat me like I was important. Because she didn't ask for anything. Because I didn't feel alone that night." But again, he chose the simpler truth. "Because some people don't come into your life by accident," he said. Annie nodded slowly. "That makes sense." Monica looked out the window for a moment, watching the rain trace quiet paths down the glass. Then she spoke, softer this time. "You found what you were looking for now?" Daniel followed her gaze. "Maybe," he said. "But now what?" she asked. That question lingered, because it didn't come with an easy answer. Daniel looked at Annie, then back at Monica. "I don't know yet," he admitted. "But I know I don't want to walk away again." Monica turned back to him fully. "You say that like it's your decision," she said. Daniel held her gaze. "It's not," he replied. "It's yours." That shifted something. Small, but real. Monica leaned back slightly, studying him in a way that measured more than words. Not who he was, but who he had become. Annie finished her hot chocolate and pushed the cup forward. "Can we come back here again?" she asked. Monica raised an eyebrow. "We'll see." Daniel smiled. "I'd like that." Monica glanced at him. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves." "Fair." The check arrived. Daniel reached for it. Monica placed her hand over it first. "We split it," she said. Daniel paused, then nodded. "All right." No argument. No insistance. That mattered more than the bill itself. They stepped outside a few minutes later. The rain had slowed, leaving the air cleaner, cooler. Streetlights reflected in shallow puddles, stretching light across the pavement. Daniel opened the car door again. Monica didn't hesitate this time. They got in. As the engine started and the warmth returned, Annie leaned her head lightly against the window. "Tired?" Monica asked. "A little." Daniel adjusted the mirror slightly, glancing back. "You did good today," he said. Annie looked at him. "For what?" "For paying attention." She smiled faintly. "You too." Daniel chuckled under his breath. As they pulled away from the diner, the road ahead stretched quiet and open. But inside the car, something had changed. Not dramatically, not loudly, but enough. Enough to know this wasn't just a memory anymore. It was something moving forward. Carefully, slowly, but forward. And for the first time in a long while, Daniel wasn't thinking about where he needed to be next. He was exactly where he needed to be. The roads were quieter now. Rain had washed the city clean, leaving behind a soft sheen that reflected streetlights in long, quiet stretches. The kind of night where people stayed indoors, where conversations grew softer, where even time seemed to slow down just enough to be noticed. Inside the car, Annie had grown quiet. Not asleep, but close. Her head rested gently against the window, her fingers loosely holding the edge of her coat, as if even in rest she didn't want to let it go. Daniel noticed. He adjusted his driving slightly, smoother, more careful over bumps. Monica noticed that too. "You don't have to drive like that," she said quietly. Daniel kept his eyes on the road. "I don't mind." A small pause followed. Then Monica leaned back, her voice softer now. "She's used to falling asleep in places like this." Daniel glanced at the rearview mirror. "Waiting?" Monica nodded. "Waiting." There was something in that word that lingered longer than it should have. Daniel understood it not fully, but enough. "How far?" he asked. 10 minutes, she replied. He nodded and drove on. The silence between them had changed again. It was no longer cautious. It was familiar in a quiet way, like two people learning how to exist in the same space without needing to fill every second with words. After a moment, Daniel spoke. "You fixed the coat yourself?" Monica looked down at her hands briefly. "The sleeve and the side seam," she said. "The rest held up better than I expected." "It was made to." She gave a faint, almost amused exhale. "Yeah," she said. "I figured." Daniel hesitated, then added, "I noticed the stitching. You did it carefully." Monica shrugged slightly. "If you're going to keep something, you take care of it." Daniel nodded. That line stayed with him. If you're going to keep something, you take care of it. He looked at the road ahead, but his thoughts had shifted. There were things in his life he had built, maintained, protected, but there were also things he had let go of too easily. Or maybe, things he had never been given the chance to hold on to. The car slowed as they turned into a quieter neighborhood. Streetlights grew farther apart. Houses sat closer to the road, modest but lived in. Some porches had lights on. Others were dark. Daniel parked along the curb in front of a small, worn but tidy house. "This is us," Monica said. Daniel turned off the engine, but didn't move right away. Neither did she. Annie stirred slightly in the back seat. "We're home?" she murmured. "Yeah," Monica said gently. "We're home." Daniel stepped out first, walking around to open the back door. "Easy," he said softly. Annie blinked, sitting up. "Sorry," she said automatically. "No need to apologize," Daniel replied. She stepped out, still a little sleepy, adjusting the coat around her shoulders. Monica joined them on the sidewalk, pulling her own jacket tighter against the cool air. For a moment, the three of them stood there. The night was quiet. No rush, no pressure, just a moment that didn't need to be anything more than it already was. "Thank you," Monica said. Daniel nodded. "For dinner," she added, and, "for earlier." He understood what she meant. "You don't have to thank me for staying," he said. Monica looked at him. "I do," she replied. "Most people wouldn't." Daniel considered that, then said quietly, "Maybe most people haven't lost something they didn't realize mattered." Monica held his gaze for a second longer than before. Then she looked away. Annie tugged lightly at her sleeve. "Mom, can I show him?" she asked. Monica hesitated. "Show me what?" Daniel asked. Annie didn't wait for permission this time. She ran up the small porch steps, opened the door, and disappeared inside. Monica sighed softly. "She does that," she said. Daniel smiled faintly. "I can see that." A few seconds later, Annie came back out, holding something carefully in both hands. A small drawing. She stepped down and handed it to Daniel. "I made this at school," she said. Daniel took it. It was simple crayon lines, uneven shapes, but clear. A coet. Dark, long, with a small marking near the collar, and beside it two figures. One taller, one smaller. Daniel's chest tightened slightly. "You remembered it like this?" he asked. Annie nodded. "Mom said it was important." Daniel glanced at Monica. She didn't look surprised. "She listens," Monica said. Daniel looked back at the drawing. "Yeah," he said softly. "She does." He handed it back carefully. "Thank you for showing me." Annie smiled faintly, then stepped back beside her mother. The moment lingered. Then Monica spoke again. "You don't have to come back," she said. Daniel looked at her. "I know." Another pause. "But if you do," she added, "it won't be because of the past." Daniel understood. "It'll be because of now," he said. Monica nodded. "Exactly." Daniel stepped back slightly, giving them space. "I'll see you around," he said. It wasn't a promise. Not yet. But it wasn't an ending either. Annie waved lightly. "Good night." "Good night," Daniel replied. Monica gave a small nod. Then they turned and went inside. The door closed gently behind them. Daniel stood there for a moment longer. The street was quiet, the night air cool, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was leaving something behind. He got back into his car, but didn't start it right away. His hands rested on the steering wheel. His eyes lingered on the house. Simple, modest, real. Then he exhaled, started the engine, and pulled away slowly. Not rushing, not escaping, just moving forward. Because something had shifted, and whatever came next, he knew one thing for certain. This time, he wasn't going to let it disappear. Daniel didn't drive straight home. He told himself he would. That was the plan: return to the quiet order of his world. Review tomorrow's schedule, answer the emails that had already begun stacking up, and slide back into the rhythm that had defined his life for years. But instead, he found himself slowing at intersections longer than necessary, taking turns without thinking, letting the road decide for him. The city had changed in the rain. Lights stretched across wet pavement, soft and distorted. Neon signs flickered in reflections. A few late-night diners still buzzed with quiet life. But most places had settled into stillness. Daniel eventually pulled into his driveway without remembering the last few blocks. The gates opened automatically. The house stood exactly as it always did: clean lines, quiet symmetry, controlled perfection. Inside, everything was in place. Everything, except him. He stepped in, removed his coat, and paused in the foyer. For a long moment, he just stood there, listening. Nothing. No voices. No movement. No life beyond what he brought into the space himself. He exhaled slowly and walked toward his study. The desk was exactly as he'd left it. Files stacked neatly. A tablet glowing faintly with unread notifications. A glass of water untouched. Daniel sat down, picked up the tablet, and stared at the screen. Numbers. Reports. Message. Important things. Things that had once defined his sense of purpose. He set it back down. For the first time in a long time, it all felt distant. Instead, his mind returned to something simpler. A small diner, a quiet voice, a child holding onto a coat like it meant something. He leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes briefly. If you're going to keep something, you take care of it. Monica's words settled again, deeper this time. Daniel opened his eyes. Across the room, hanging neatly on a stand, was his coat. The second one, the one he had kept. He stood and walked toward it. His fingers brushed lightly over the fabric, tracing the same lines he had checked earlier. Same stitching, same weight, same memory. But now, it wasn't just a reminder. It was a connection. He stood there for a while, lost in thought, until a soft knock came at the door. Sir? Daniel turned. Mary stood in the doorway, his housekeeper of over a decade, steady and observant in ways that didn't intrude. You're back later than usual, she said. Daniel nodded slightly. I stopped somewhere. Mary stepped in just enough to see his face. There was a pause. Then she asked, gently, was it important? Daniel considered that. Yes, he said. Mary didn't ask more. She never did. That's good, she replied. Would you like dinner? Daniel almost said no out of habit. Then he stopped. I already ate, he said. But thank you. Mary nodded. If you need anything, I will. She gave a small, knowing look before stepping back. Good night, sir. Good night, Mary. The door closed softly. Daniel remained where he was. Then, after a moment, he returned to his desk, but this time, he didn't sit. Instead, he opened a drawer and pulled out something he hadn't looked at in years. A small envelope. Inside it, a single receipt, faded, from a roadside mechanic shop, dated the same night his car had broken down. He had kept it for no real reason at the time. Or maybe, for a reason he hadn't been ready to admit. He stared at it, then let out a quiet breath. You didn't leave anything, he murmured. But you didn't leave nothing. The thought lingered, because now, he knew where she had gone. He knew where she was, and that changed everything. He closed the drawer and walked back into the main living space. The house still felt the same, still quiet, still controlled, but something in him no longer matched it. He reached for his phone, paused, then scrolled through his contacts. Names filled the screen. Executives, partners, assistants, people who knew his schedule, his business, his expectations. But not one of them knew anything about what had happened tonight. Daniel stopped scrolling, then locked the phone. Not everything needed to be explained. Not yet. He walked to the window. Outside, the rain had eased into a soft mist. The city stretched beyond his view, wide, restless, full of stories that rarely crossed paths unless something forced them to. Tonight, something had, and he couldn't ignore that. He rested his hand lightly against the glass. She didn't expect anything, he said quietly to himself, and she still doesn't. That mattered, more than he could explain. Because whatever this was, it wasn't something he could approach the way he handled everything else in his life. No control, no strategy, no negotiation, just presence, just consistency. Just showing up. Daniel stepped back from the window. His decision didn't feel dramatic. It wasn't a declaration. It was something quieter, stronger in its own way. He would go back, not to fix anything, not to claim anything, but to understand, to earn whatever came next. And maybe, to finally not let something meaningful slip through his hands again. Upstairs, the house settled into silence. But downstairs, for the first time in years, Daniel Carter wasn't thinking about what he had built. He was thinking about what he had missed, and what somehow had found its way back to him anyway. Outside, the last drops of rain fell softly against the city, and somewhere not far away, in a small house with warm light behind the windows, a different kind of life continued. One that didn't know yet how much it was about to change. Daniel woke earlier than usual, not because of an alarm, because his mind had already moved ahead of him. For years, his mornings followed the same rhythm: measured, efficient, predictable. Wake at 6, coffee at 6:15, briefing by 7. By 8, he was already 3 decisions deep into the day. This morning, the rhythm felt off, not disrupted, just incomplete. He stood by the window in his bedroom, a cup of coffee in hand, watching the city ease into daylight. The rain had passed, leaving behind a pale sky and streets still damp from the night before. Commuters would be out soon. Traffic would return. Everything would resume. Everything except him. His reflection in the glass looked the same, composed, controlled, exactly who the world expected him to be. But beneath that, something had shifted. He took a slow sip of coffee, then set the cup down. Downstairs, the house was already awake in its quiet way. Mary moved through the kitchen, preparing breakfast that would likely go untouched. The news played softly in the background, headlines rolling past with urgency that no longer felt urgent to him. "Good morning, sir," Mary said as he entered. "Morning. You have a full schedule today." "I know." She glanced at him briefly, then added, "Your assistant called twice already." Daniel nodded. "Tell her I'll call back." Mary hesitated. "That's not like you." Daniel gave a faint smile. "No," he said, "it's not." He poured himself another cup of coffee but didn't drink it. Instead, he stood there for a moment, then reached for his phone. He didn't scroll this time. He went straight to his assistant's number. She picked up immediately. "Good morning, Mr. Carter. I was just about to cancel the morning meetings," he said. There was a pause. "I'm sorry?" "Reschedule them. Push everything to the afternoon." Another pause. "Is everything all right?" Daniel looked out the kitchen window. "Yes," he said. "It is." His assistant hesitated, then adjusted. "All right. I'll move your schedule." "Thank you." He ended the call before she could ask more. Mary watched him quietly. "You're taking time off?" she asked. Daniel shook his head slightly. "No," he said. "I'm using it differently." Mary didn't question that. She simply nodded. "That's good," she said. Daniel picked up his coat. Not the one from yesterday. The other one. The one that matched. He paused for a second, running his hand over the fabric. Then he put it on. "I'll be out for a while," he said. Mary gave him a small, knowing look. "Take your time." Daniel stepped outside. The air was crisp now, cleaner after the rain. The kind of morning that made things feel possible without explaining why. He got into his car and started the engine. This time, he knew exactly where he was going. The drive felt shorter than it had the night before. Or maybe he just wasn't avoiding the destination anymore. When he turned onto Monica's street, the neighborhood was already awake in its own way. A few cars pulled out of driveways. Someone watered a small patch of grass. A man across the street read a newspaper on his porch. Daniel parked where he had the night before. He didn't get out right away. He sat there for a moment, hands resting on the wheel, not hesitating, just acknowledging. Then he stepped out. The house looked the same, modest, quiet, real. He walked up to the door and knocked. Not too loud, not too soft. A few seconds passed. Then footsteps. The door opened. Monica stood there, already dressed for work. She didn't look surprised. She looked prepared. "You came back," she said. Daniel nodded. "I said I would." She studied him for a moment, then stepped aside. "Come in." The house was simple, clean, lived in. A small table near the window. A couch that had seen years but was still cared for. A shelf with books, some for school, some older. a few drawings pinned to the wall. Daniel noticed all of it, not because it was unusual, because it wasn't. Annie appeared from the hallway, holding a piece of toast. "You came back," she said, echoing her mother. Daniel smiled slightly. "I did." She nodded, as if that confirmed something she had already believed. Monica moved toward the kitchen. "I have to leave in 10 minutes, she said. "Morning shift." Daniel glanced at her. "Then I won't take long." She turned back. "That depends on what you came for." Daniel didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked around once more, then back at her. "I came to ask if I could help," he said. Monica crossed her arms slightly. "With what?" "Anything you'd let me." The room went quiet, not tense, just still. Annie looked between them. Monica held his gaze. "You don't even know what we need," she said. Daniel nodded. "Then I'll learn." Monica exhaled slowly. "That's not how this works." "I know. Do you?" Daniel didn't try to convince her. "I know enough to understand that I don't get to decide anything here," he said. "But I also know I don't want to stand on the outside of it." Monica watched him carefully. "You have a life," she said. "A big one. So do you." She shook her head slightly. "Not like yours." Daniel didn't argue. Instead, he said something simpler. "Different doesn't mean separate." That landed, not as agreement, but as something worth considering. Annie stepped closer, finishing her toast. "Are you staying?" she asked. Daniel glanced at Monica. "That's not my decision." Annie looked at her mother. Monica closed her eyes briefly, then opened them again. "You can stay for a few minutes," she said. Daniel nodded. "That's enough." Monica picked up her keys. "I need to go," she said. "School bus comes in 20. Daniel stepped back slightly. "I'll walk you out." She didn't refuse. They stepped outside together. The morning air carried a quiet steadiness. Monica stopped near the curb. "You don't fix things like this in a day," she said. Daniel nodded. "I'm not trying to." She looked at him. "Then what are you trying to do?" Daniel held her gaze. "Stai." Monica studied him one last time. Then she nodded once. "Then we'll see." She turned and walked down the street. Daniel stood there for a moment, then turned back toward the house. Inside, Annie was already at the table, working on her homework again. The coat hung neatly over the chair. Daniel stepped in quietly, not as a stranger anymore, not yet as anything else, just present. And this time, he wasn't going anywhere. The house felt different in the morning light. Not larger, not brighter, just more honest. Daniel stood near the doorway for a moment after Monica left, listening to the quiet settle back into place. The sound of her footsteps faded down the sidewalk, replaced by the faint ticking of a wall clock and the soft scratch of pencil on paper. Annie didn't look up. She sat at the small table, leaning over her worksheet, her brow slightly furrowed in concentration. The coat hung neatly over the back of her chair, sleeves folded just enough to keep them from brushing the floor. Daniel noticed that. "Care. Always care." He stepped closer, not wanting to interrupt, but not wanting to stand apart either. "What are you working on?" he asked gently. Annie glanced up briefly. "Math," she said. "Word problems." Daniel smiled faintly. "Those are usually trickier than they look." She nodded. "They try to confuse you." "That sounds about right." He pulled out the chair across from her and sat down slowly, giving her space to keep working. For a few minutes, neither of them spoke. Daniel simply watched, not in a way that intruded, but in a way that observed. The way she erased carefully instead of roughly. The way she read the question twice before writing anything down. The way she checked her answer without being told. "She taught you that?" he asked after a moment. Annie didn't need clarification. "Yes." Daniel nodded. "I can tell." Annie looked at him again. "You're not working today?" she asked. "I moved some things around." "Why?" Daniel considered the question. "Because this matters. Because I don't want to miss this. Because I've missed enough already." But he kept it simple. "Because I wanted to be here." Annie studied him for a second, then went back to her paper. "Okay. That was all. No suspicion. No demand. Just acceptance." Daniel leaned back slightly, letting the quiet stretch. Outside, a car passed slowly. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked once, and then stopped. The world moved on, unaware that anything had shifted. Inside, something had. After a while, Annie pushed the paper slightly toward him. "Can you check this one?" she asked. Daniel looked at it. "A simple problem. If a bus travels 12 miles in 20 minutes, how far does it go in 1 hour? He smiled. Walk me through how you solved it. Annie straightened slightly. I multiplied 3 times, she said, because 20 minutes goes into an hour 3 times. Daniel nodded. And? 12 times 3 is 36. He looked at her. And do you think that's right? She hesitated, then nodded. Yes. Daniel gave a small smile. It is. Annie smiled faintly just enough to show she was pleased. You're good at this, he said. She shrugged. I just think about it. That's usually how it works. She leaned back slightly in her chair. Did you go to school a lot? She asked. Daniel let out a quiet breath. More than I wanted to at the time, he said. Not as much as I wish I had looking back. Annie tilted her head. That doesn't make sense. It will one day. She accepted that answer, then glanced toward the coat. You brought yours today, she said. Daniel followed her gaze. Yes. Why? He looked at it for a moment. Because I didn't want to forget what this is connected to, he said. Annie considered that. My mom doesn't forget things, she said. I know. She just doesn't talk about them all the time. Daniel nodded. That's different. Annie looked back at her paper. Are you going to come back again? She asked. Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he leaned forward slightly, resting his hands on the table. If it's all right, he said. Annie looked at him, then toward the door, then back again. That's up to her, she said, repeating what he had said before. Daniel smiled. Yes, he said. It is. Another quiet moment passed. Then Annie gathered her papers, stacking them neatly. The bus comes soon, she said. Daniel glanced at the clock. I'll wait with you. She nodded. They moved toward the front window, where the street was visible through slightly worn glass. Daniel stood beside her, not too close. Not distant either, just present. You always wait here? He asked. Yes. Every morning? Yes. He looked out at the street. Simple, routine, but meaningful. The kind of consistency that built something over time without needing recognition. After a minute, Annie spoke again. You didn't have to come back, she said. Daniel kept his eyes forward. I know. Most people don't. He nodded. I'm not most people. She glanced at him. That's what my mom would say too, she said. Daniel smiled slightly. Then she's probably right. In the distance, the low rumble of a bus approached. Annie straightened a little. That's mine. Daniel stepped back slightly, giving her space. She grabbed her bag, then reached for the coat. Before putting it on, she paused, then looked at him. Thank you for yesterday, she said. Daniel nodded. You're welcome. She slipped the coat on, adjusting it the way she always did, pulling the collar up slightly, smoothing the front. Then she headed toward the door. Daniel opened it for her. Outside, the morning had settled into a steady rhythm. The bus pulled up with a soft hiss. Annie stepped down from the porch, then turned back briefly. Bye, she said. Bye. She walked toward the bus without hesitation, not looking back again, because she didn't need to. Daniel watched until the doors closed and the bus pulled away. Then he stood there for a moment longer. The street returned to quiet, the house behind him still, and something inside him, steady, not rushed, not uncertain, just anchored. He turned back toward the door. This time, when he stepped inside, it didn't feel like he was entering someone else's world. It felt like he was beginning to understand it. The house felt quieter after Annie left. Not empty, but quieter in a way that made every small sound stand out. The ticking clock. The faint hum of the refrigerator. The distant movement of a car passing by outside. Daniel remained by the door for a moment, longer than necessary, his hand still resting lightly on the handle. Then he closed it gently. He didn't move right away. Instead, he stood there, listening not for anything in particular, but for the absence of something he hadn't realized had filled the space just minutes ago. Presence, routine, life moving forward without question. He turned slowly and walked back toward the small table. Annie's pencil lay exactly where she had left it. Her worksheet was stacked neatly, edges aligned, as if even in a hurry she had taken the time to leave things in order. Daniel sat down, not out of habit, but because something told him to stay a little longer. He picked up the pencil, turning it slightly between his fingers. It was worn down, the eraser nearly gone. Used carefully, not wasted. He set it back exactly where it had been. If you're going to keep something, you take care of it. The words echoed again. quieter now but deeper. Daniel leaned back slightly, his eyes drifting around the room. There wasn't much, but nothing felt lacking. Every item had purpose. Every space had been lived in, not styled. A small bookshelf stood against the wall. He rose and walked over, scanning the titles. School books, a few older novels, a dictionary with worn edges. He pulled one out, a hardcover with a faded spine. Inside the front cover, written in careful handwriting, was a name: Monica Hayes. Daniel closed the book slowly. He didn't know why that affected him. Maybe because it was real. Not a file, not a profile, not a name attached to data or reports. Just a person who had lived a life he had never taken the time to understand. A life that had continued completely separate from his until yesterday. He placed the book back, then moved toward the window. Outside, the street had settled into late morning quiet. The bus was gone. The sidewalks mostly empty. A breeze moved lightly through the trees, carrying the last traces of rain. Daniel rested his hand on the back of the chair where the coat had hung earlier. Empty now, but not really, because the absence carried meaning. He stepped away, then stopped. Something on the wall caught his attention. Drawings, simpleones, crayons, markers, paper taped carefully at the corners. He moved closer. One showed a house, small, uneven lines, but detailed in its own way. Another showed a figure standing beside a taller one. And then, he saw it again. The coat, drawn larger this time, darker, more deliberate. And beside it, 3 figures. Daniel's breath slowed. 3. He studied it carefully. There were no names written, no labels, just shapes. But the intention was clear. He stepped back slightly, not overwhelmed, but aware of something forming, not declared, not explained, just forming. The sound of his phone vibrating broke the moment. He glanced down. His assistant. Again. Daniel stared at the screen for a second, then answered. "Yes, Mr. Carter," she said quickly, relief in her voice. "We've rescheduled your morning, but the board is asking if you'll still attend the afternoon briefing." Daniel looked around the room once more. The table, the drawings, the quiet. "I'll be there," he said. A pause. "Is everything all right?" she asked. Daniel considered the question, then answered simply, "Yes," because it was. Not perfect, not resolved, but right. He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket. Then he moved toward the door, but before he left, he turned back once more, not out of doubt, out of acknowledgement. This place, this moment, this wasn't something to pass through. It was something to return to. He stepped outside. The air had warmed slightly, the kind of late morning that carried quiet promise. Daniel walked to his car, opened the door, then paused. He looked back at the house, not with curiosity anymore, not even with uncertainty, but with intention. "I'll be back," he said quietly, not to anyone standing there, just to the moment itself. Then he got in and drove away. This time, not to escape, but to return later. And as the car moved through the streets of Chicago, back toward the world he knew so well, Daniel Carter understood something clearly. For years, he had built a life that moved forward without looking back. But now, for the first time, he wasn't looking back at all. He was looking at something he hadn't seen before. Something steady, something real, something worth showing up for. And this time, he intended to. The building didn't change. Glass, steel, clean lines that reflected the sky but revealed nothing inside. The headquarters of Carter Energy stood exactly as it always had. Precise, controlled, efficient, down to the smallest detail. Daniel stepped out of his car, adjusted his coat, and walked toward the entrance. Security nodded. "Good morning, sir." "Morning." The lobby carried the quiet hum of professionalism, low voices, polished floors, the distant echo of footsteps moving with purpose. Screens displayed market updates. Assistants crossed paths with folders in hand. Everything moved on time. Everything moved forward. Daniel walked through it all like he always did. But something in him didn't match the rhythm anymore. Mr. Carter, his assistant, Rebecca, approached quickly, tablet in hand. "We've shifted the board meeting to 1:30. Legal is waiting on your approval for the Midwest acquisition. And there's a call from New York you postponed this morning." Daniel nodded once. "Send legal the documents. I'll review them after the meeting." Rebecca blinked slightly. After? She repeated, surprised. Daniel glanced at her. Yes. A small pause. That's not your usual order, she said carefully. Daniel allowed a faint smile. I'm adjusting. Rebecca didn't question it further. Understood. They moved toward the elevator together. Inside, the doors closed with a soft, final sound. Rebecca glanced at him again. You seem different today, she said. Daniel looked straight ahead. I am. The answer was simple and final. The elevator opened. The boardroom was already set. Men and women in tailored suits sat around a long table, screens glowing with projections and numbers. Conversations paused as Daniel entered. Daniel, one of them greeted. We were just going over the projections. Daniel took his seat. Let's begin. The meeting moved quickly. Numbers, forecasts, risks, expansion strategies. Daniel spoke when needed, listened when necessary. But something had changed. Not his ability, not his clarity, his distance. He saw it now, the way decisions were made without ever touching the lives they affected, the way growth was measured in percentages instead of people, the way success had slowly separated him from everything real. At one point, a board member leaned forward. The South Side expansion will require restructuring smaller operations, he said. Gas stations, local employment, minimal impact overall, but necessary. Daniel's attention sharpened. Minimal? He repeated. The man nodded. Statistically speaking. Daniel leaned back slightly. And practically? The man hesitated. Well, some closures. Workforce adjustments. Standard process. Daniel said nothing for a moment, but his mind had already shifted. A gas station. A narrow hallway. A woman finishing her shift. A child waiting at a table. Put that on hold, Daniel said. The room stilled. I'm sorry? The man asked. The South Side plan, Daniel said calmly. Pause it. Another board member leaned in. Daniel, that's a major part of this quarter's expansion. I'm aware. Then why? Because I want a closer review, Daniel said. Not louder, not harsher, just final. The room exchanged glances. Rebecca, seated near the end, watched him closely. All right, someone said slowly. We can revisit it next session. Daniel nodded. Good. The meeting continued, but the shift had already happened. By the time it ended, the room felt different, not uncomfortable, just recalibrated. People gathered their papers, conversations restarting in quieter tones. Rebecca approached again. You want me to reschedule the New York call? She asked. Daniel shook his head. Tomorrow. She hesitated. You've never delayed that account before. Daniel looked at her. There's a first time for everything. Rebecca studied him for a second, then nodded. All right. She turned to leave, then paused. Whatever it is, she said. I hope it's worth it. Daniel didn't hesitate. It is. Rebecca gave a small nod and walked away. The room emptied. Daniel remained seated. For the first time in years, the silence of the boardroom didn't feel like control. It felt hollow. He stood and walked to the window. From here, the city stretched wide, bouzou, complex, alive in ways numbers could never fully measure. Somewhere in that city, a small house stood on a quiet street. A child sat at a table doing homework. A coat hung carefully over a chair. A life continued, not waiting, not expecting, just living. Daniel placed his hand lightly against the glass. Minimal impact, he repeated quietly, then shook his head. No, he turned away from the window, back to the room, back to the life he had built, but not the same way. Not anymore. He picked up his coat, not the one from this morning. The other one, the one that matched. He slipped it on, and as he walked out of the boardroom, something settled inside him with quiet certainty. This wasn't about fixing the past. It wasn't about making up for lost time. It was about choosing differently now. Choosing to see, to stay, to act. Not because it was required, but because it was right. Outside, the city moved on. Inside, Daniel Carter finally began to move with it. The afternoon carried a different weight. Not heavier, just clearer. Daniel left the office earlier than anyone expected. Not abruptly. Not in a way that raised alarms. Just decisively. He gave instructions, signed what needed to be signed, and stepped out before the day could pull him back into its usual rhythm. Rebecca noticed. She always did. Leaving early, she asked, catching up with him near the elevator. For today, She studied him for a second. That's 2 changes in one day. Daniel pressed the button. Not all change is bad. I didn't say it was. The elevator doors opened. Rebecca didn't step in. You're going back there, she said. It wasn't a question. Daniel paused, then nodded. Yes. Rebecca crossed her arms lightly. I don't know what happened last night, she said, but I've worked with you long enough to know when something matters to you. Daniel gave a faint smile. It does. She considered that, then stepped back. All right, she said. Just don't forget you still run a company. Daniel Methergaze. I know, he said. That's why I'm paying attention now. That answer lingered longer than she expected. Rebecca nodded once. Then I'll handle things here. I know you will. The doors closed. Daniel descended alone. Outside, the city had shifted again. Afternoon light stretched across buildings, softer now, less demanding. Traffic moved steadily. People walked with purpose, heading somewhere that mattered to them. Daniel got into his car. This time, there was no hesitation, no pause. He drove, not fast, not slow, just certain. When he turned onto Monica's street again, the quiet was familiar now. The same houses, the same uneven sidewalk, the same sense of something grounded, unchanged by everything else the city carried. He parked in the same spot, stepped out, walked to the door, knocked. This time, it opened quicker. Monica stood there, still in her work clothes, though her shift had clearly ended. There was a slight tiredness in her eyes, but not the kind that broke a person, the kind that came from carrying responsibility without complaint. You came back, she said again. Daniel nodded. I said I would. She stepped aside. Come in. He entered. The house felt different in the afternoon, warmer, alive in a quieter way. Annie sat on the floor this time, a notebook open, crayons scattered around her. The coat was folded beside her instead of worn. She looked up. You came back again, she said. Daniel smiled slightly. I did. She nodded, as if confirming something she had already decided earlier that morning. Monica moved toward the kitchen, setting down her bag. You don't waste time, she said. Daniel leaned lightly against the back of a chair. I've wasted enough. Monica glanced at him over her shoulder. That sounds like regret. It is. She turned fully now. About what? Daniel didn't rush the answer. About not understanding what mattered when I had the chance. The room grew quieter, not heavy, just honest. Monica studied him. You didn't know me, she said. No, Daniel agreed, but I knew enough. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she walked over and sat across from him. And now? She asked. Daniel Methergaze. Now I want to understand what I didn't before. Monica leaned back slightly. That's not something you ask for, she said. That's something you show. Daniel nodded. I know. Annie shifted on the floor, listening without interrupting. Monica noticed. Go finish your drawing, she said gently. I am, Annie replied, but she stayed close. Daniel didn't mind. Neither did Monica. Why did you come back today, she asked. Daniel considered the question. Because I couldn't stay away. Because something about this feels real. Because I don't want to miss this again. But again, he chose something simpler. Because leaving felt wrong, he said. Monica watched him carefully. That's not a reason, she replied. It is for me. She shook her head slightly. No, she said. That's a feeling. Not a reason. Daniel leaned forward slightly. Then here's the reason, he said. I don't want to be someone who walks away from something that matters. Just because it's unfamiliar. That landed. Not immediately, but clearly. Monica didn't speak right away. Annie looked up again. Quieter now. You're going to keep coming back, she asked. Daniel looked at her. If that's all right. Annie glanced at her mother. Monica didn't answer immediately. She was thinking, measuring, not his words, his consistency. Finally, she spoke. You can come back, she said, but not like this. Daniel frowned slightly. Like what? Like you're trying to catch up all at once, she said. Life doesn't work that way. Daniel nodded slowly. Then how does it work? Monica met his gaze. Day by day, she said. Showing up when you say you will. Not when it's convenient. Daniel absorbed that, then nodded. All right. Monica studied him one more time. You mean that? Yes. She leaned back slightly. Then we'll see. Annie smiled faintly at that. Not because it was a yes, but because it wasn't a no. The room settled again. Not uncertain. Just open. Daniel stayed a while longer. Not talking too much. Not asking too much. Just being there. And as the afternoon light shifted slowly across the room, he realized something he hadn't expected. This wasn't something he could control. This wasn't something he could fix. This was something he had to earn. And for the first time in his life, Daniel Carter was willing to do exactly that. The next few days didn't announce themselves. They simply happened. No dramatic shift. No sudden turning point. Just a quiet unfolding of small moments. Each one simple on its own. But together, building something neither Daniel nor Monica rushed to define. Daniel came back the next morning. Not early, not late. On time. He knocked. Monica opened the door, already dressed for work again. This time, there was no surprise in her eyes, only recognition. "You said you would," she said. "I did." She stepped aside. "Come in." It was becoming routine, not established but forming. Annie was at the table again. This time reading aloud softly under her breath, tracing each word with her finger. The coat hung on the same chair, always placed carefully, never thrown aside. Daniel noticed that every time. Consistency. He nodded toward Annie. "Morning." She looked up. "Morning." Then, without hesitation, she slid her book slightly toward him. "I'm on this part," she said. Daniel pulled out the chair. "All right," he said. "Let's hear it." She read, slow at first, then steadier. Daniel didn't interrupt. He listened, and when she finished, he nodded once. "That was good." She looked at him. Good? Or just good? He allowed a small smile. Good. That seemed to matter. Monica watched from the kitchen doorway, arms loosely folded, not interfering but not distant either. She noticed what he didn't rush, what he didn't correct too quickly, what he allowed Annie to figure out on her own. That mattered more than any word he could have said. "I'll be late if I keep standing here," Monica said finally. Daniel stood. "I can walk you out." She shook her head. "You stay," she said. "Bus comes in 10. Daniel nodded. "All right." Monica grabbed her keys. Before leaving, she looked at Annie. "Lunch is in your bag." "I know. Homework after school." "I know." Monica glanced at Daniel. Not asking, not instructing, just acknowledging. Then she left. The door closed. The house settled. Daniel sat back down. Annie turned the page. "You're going to come every day?" she asked. Daniel didn't answer immediately. "If that's all right," he said. Annie thought about it, then nodded. "It is." That was enough. The bus came. Daniel waited with her again. No question, no rush, just presence. And when she left, he stayed a little longer before heading back to his own world. But his world was beginning to change. At the office, things didn't move the same way anymore. Not slower, just more deliberate. Daniel asked different questions, looked closer at decisions, paused where he once moved quickly. Rebecca noticed immediately. "You're reviewing things twice now," she said one afternoon, standing across from his desk. "I should have been doing that already," Daniel replied. She tilted her head slightly. "Something shifted," she said. Daniel looked up at her. "Yes." She didn't ask what. She didn't need to. "What do you need from me?" she asked instead. Daniel leaned back. "Keep things moving," he said. "But flag anything that affects people directly." Rebecca raised an eyebrow. "That's a broader category than you used to define." "I know." She nodded slowly. "All right." That was enough. Back at the house, Monica began to notice something else. Consistency. Daniel didn't arrive with grand gestures. He didn't bring things they didn't ask for. He didn't try to fix anything. He showed up, on time, steady. One afternoon, she came home earlier than expected. She opened the door quietly. Inside, Annie sat at the table, working. Daniel sat across from her. No talking, just sitting there, reviewing something she had written. "Try that part again," he said calmly. "You were close." Annie erased carefully, then rewrote it. Daniel nodded. "That's better." Monica leaned lightly against the doorway, watching, not interrupting, not announcing herself, just seeing. After a moment, Annie looked up. "Mom, you're early." Monica stepped in. "I am." Daniel looked up. You're back early. Shift ended sooner. She set her bag down. Neither of them rushed to fill the space. And that was new. How was work? Daniel asked. Monica shrugged slightly. The same. He nodded. That's good. It's steady, she corrected. Daniel accepted that. Annie gathered her things. I finished, she said. Monica glanced at the paper, then at Daniel. You didn't do it for her? No, he said. I told you, Annie added. He just helped. Monica looked at him for a second, then nodded. Good. That word carried weight, not praise. Approval. Daniel understood the difference. That evening, he didn't stay long. He stood near the door, preparing to leave. I'll come by tomorrow, he said. Monica crossed her arms lightly. You don't have to say it every time. Daniel looked at her. I know. Then just show up. He nodded. I will. He stepped outside. The air had cooled again, carrying that same quiet stillness the neighborhood seemed to hold on to each evening. Behind him, the door closed, not shutting him out, just marking the end of another day. And as Daniel walked back to his car, something settled into place, not loudly, not dramatically, but firmly. This wasn't about proving anything anymore. Not to Monica, not to Annie, not even to himself. It was about something simpler, showing up, again and again, until it wasn't something that needed to be questioned at all, until it simply was. And for the first time in a long time, Daniel Carter wasn't trying to build something. He was learning how to be part of it. The rhythm held. That was the first thing Daniel noticed. Not excitement, not change, not even progress in the way he used to measure it. Just rhythm, morning visits, quiet afternoons, evenings that ended without promises but never without intention. It wasn't something he scheduled anymore, it was something he honored. And in that rhythm, something deeper began to surface. Not spoken, but felt. It started on a Thursday. Nothing about the day suggested it would be different. Daniel arrived as usual on time. No announcement, no hesitation. The door opened before he knocked the second time. Monica, you're early, she said. 2 minutes, he replied. She stepped aside. That's early for you. Daniel allowed a faint smile and walked in. The house carried the same quiet order. Annie was already at the table. But this time she wasn't working. She was staring at her paper. Not frustrated, just still. Daniel noticed immediately. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he sat down across from her. What's going on? He asked gently. Annie didn't look up. Nothing. Daniel nodded slightly. That usually means something. She shifted in her chair. It's just a question. What kind? She hesitated, then turned the paper slightly toward him. It wasn't math. It wasn't reading. It was writing. A simple prompt at the top of the page. Write about your family. Daniel felt something quiet settle in his chest. He didn't react outwardly, just leaned in slightly. What did you write so far? Annie pointed. He read, My mom works a lot. She makes sure everything is okay. She says we don't need much. Just to be careful with what we have. Daniel nodded. That's good. Annie didn't respond. Is that all? He asked. She shook her head. There's more space, she said. Daniel looked at the empty lines, then back at her. What's stopping you? Annie finally looked up. Her voice was quieter this time. I don't know what else to say. Daniel didn't answer immediately, because he understood the question behind the question. Not about writing, about definition, about belonging. Before he could respond, Monica's voice came from the kitchen. Some things don't need to be filled just because there's space. Daniel glanced toward her. She stepped into the room, drying her hands. Annie looked at her, but the teacher said to finish it. Monica walked over and rested a hand lightly on the back of Annie's chair. Then write what's true, she said. Annie frowned slightly. That's all that's true. Monica met her eyes. Then that's enough. The room went quiet. Daniel watched both of them, then spoke carefully. Sometimes, he said, what you don't write says just as much as what you do. Annie looked at him. Like what? Daniel leaned back slightly. Like what matters, he said, and what you're still figuring out. Annie considered that, then looked back at the paper. She didn't write, but she didn't look stuck anymore either. Monica stepped away, giving her space again. Daniel stayed where he was, not pushing, not filling the silence. After a moment, Annie picked up her pencil again, slowly, carefully, and began to write. Daniel didn't read it. He didn't need to, because the act itself mattered more than the words. A few minutes later, she set the pencil down. "I'm done," she said. Monica glanced over. "Good." Daniel nodded. "Want me to check it?" Annie shook her head. No. That answer wasn't rejection. It was independence. Daniel accepted it. All right. The moment passed quietly, but something had shifted. Subtle, important. Later that afternoon, Monica walked Daniel to the door. "You handled that well," she said. Daniel looked at her. "I didn't do anything. That's why it worked." He considered that, then nodded. They stood there for a second. Not awkward, just aware. Monica spoke again. "She's starting to notice," she said. "Notice what?" "You." Daniel didn't react right away. "That's not something I want to complicate," he said. Monica crossed her arms lightly. "Then don't," she replied. Daniel met her gaze. "It's not that simple." "No," she agreed. "It isn't." The honesty between them didn't create distance. It created clarity. "She's asking questions," Monica added. "Not out loud yet, but she will." Daniel nodded slowly. "I understand." "Do you?" Daniel didn't rush his answer. "I understand that whatever this becomes, it has to be real," he said. "Not convenient." Monica watched him closely. "Good," she said. That word again. Not praise. Not approval. Acknowledgement. Daniel stepped back. "I'll come by tomorrow." Monica gave a small nod. "All right. No more than that. No less." Daniel walked to his car. The afternoon light stretched across the street, quiet and steady. He paused before getting in, not because he doubted anything, but because he understood something now that he hadn't before. This wasn't just about showing up anymore. It was about what his presence meant, and what it would mean moving forward, because the empty lines on that paper weren't just Annie's. They belonged to all of them, and whatever filled them next would have to be written carefully, honestly, one line at a time. The next morning felt different before anything even happened, not because something had changed outside, but because something had settled inside. Daniel stood at his window longer than usual, coffee untouched in his hand, watching the city move into another day. Cars filled the streets. People stepped into routines they had followed for years. Everything was familiar, but he wasn't standing in it the same way anymore. He wasn't looking for direction. He already knew it. When he arrived at the house, he didn't knock right away, not out of hesitation, out of respect for what this had become. Then he knocked. The door opened. Annie stood there, not Monica. She looked up at him, calm, steady. "You're here," she said. Daniel nodded. "I am." She stepped aside. "Mom's in the kitchen." Daniel walked in, closing the door gently behind him. The house carried the same quiet order, but there was something else today. Anticipation. Not loud, but present. Monica stood at the counter, pouring coffee into a mug. "You're on time," she said without turning. "I said I would be." She handed him a cup without asking. He accepted it. "Thank you." They didn't say more. Not yet. Annie had already returned to the table, her notebook open again. Daniel sat across from her. This time, he didn't ask what she was working on. He already knew. She turned the notebook toward him. The page from yesterday. Finished. Neat. Complete. "Do you want to read it?" she asked. Daniel looked at her. "Only if you want me to." She nodded. He read slowly. "My mom works hard. She makes sure I'm okay. She says we don't need everything, just enough. She keeps things that matter. There are some things I'm still learning. Some people come back when you don't expect them to. And when they do, you have to decide if they're going to stay." Daniel didn't move for a moment after finishing. Not because he didn't understand, because he understood completely. He looked up. Annie was watching him, not for approval, for honesty. "What do you think?" she asked. Daniel placed the notebook gently back on the table. "I think," he said carefully, "that's one of the most honest things I've read in a long time." Annie nodded. Satisfied. Not proud. Just certain. Monica leaned against the counter, arms crossed lightly. "You didn't help her with that," she said. "No," Daniel replied. "She didn't need it." Annie closed the notebook, then looked at him again. "You said you would stay," she said. Daniel didn't hesitate. "I did." She tilted her head slightly. "Are you?" Daniel glanced at Monica, then back at Annie. "Yes," he said, "if that's all right." Annie didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked at her mother. Monica didn't step in, didn't speak. She let the moment belong where it needed to. Finally, Annie nodded. Okay, that was it. No ceremony, no declaration, just acceptance, but it carried more weight than anything else. Daniel leaned back slightly. The room felt different, not because something had been added, but because something had been decided. Monica stepped forward. This doesn't change everything, she said. Daniel met hergaze. I know. It doesn't erase anything either. I know that too. She studied him carefully. Then what does it change? Daniel thought about it, then answered simply. It changes what happens next. That was enough. Monica nodded once. All right. The word held more meaning now. Not just acknowledgement. Agreement. Later that morning, they stood together near the door. Annie had her bag ready, the coat already on. Daniel adjusted the collar slightly, not fixing, just straightening. She didn't pull away. You ready? Monica asked. Yes. Daniel opened the door. The morning air carried that same quiet steadiness. The bus approached in the distance. They stepped outside together, not separately, not uncertain. Together, the bus stopped, doors opened. Annie turned back briefly, not to check, just to look. Bye, she said. Bye, Daniel replied. Have a good day, Monica added. Annie nodded, then stepped onto the bus. The doors closed. The bus pulled away. Daniel and Monica stood there for a moment, watching, not speaking. Then Monica turned to him. You understand what this means, she said. Daniel nodded. I do. Say it. He didn't hesitate. It means I don't come and go, he said. It means I show up. Not when it's easy. Not when it's convenient. Every time. Monica held his gaze. And I don't expect anything in return. A pause. Then she nodded. Good. The word landed differently this time. Not testing. Not measuring. Accepting. Daniel exhaled quietly. Not relief. Not victory. Just clarity. The kind that didn't need to be explained. They walked back toward the house. Side by side. No distance. No rush. Inside, the space felt the same. But it wasn't. Because now, it included him. Not as a visitor. Not as a memory. But as something still being built. And as the morning settled into its quiet rhythm once more, Daniel Carter understood something he had spent years overlooking. You don't change a life in one moment. You change it by staying. And this time, he would. True connection is not built through grand gestures or sudden change, but through quiet consistency and honest presence. This story reminds us that real love and responsibility are not about claiming a place in someone's life, they are about earning it, day by day. Sometimes, the most powerful form of redemption is not fixing the past, but choosing to stay in the present. In a world that often walks away too quickly, the greatest act of character is simple. Show up, stay, and mean it. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real, and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration only.